Hey everyone, this is Aaron St. Dennis, the Mad Scientist, and welcome to the Mad Science Lab. Today I'm continuing my Guys series where I have an analyst on and they talk about three of the rookies from this class that they're higher on than consensus. Today I have Jesse Moeller joining me. Jesse, why don't you tell everyone about yourself a little? Thanks for joining me, by the way.
Thanks for having me on. Jesse Moeller, as it says on there. You can find me on Twitter. That's where I do most of my fun rantings and posts and all the data drops that I do. But it's jmoeller05. You can find me on the podcast that I do, Rantings of a Fantasy Football Fanatic. You can find me on Instagram, Snapchat, all the platforms. I write for the League Winners and PGW Fantasy, and I keep myself very involved with fantasy content.
That's a lot. I guess I should have mentioned mine. Find me on Twitter at FFMadScientist. That's how you can tell when I'm really rolling and really amped up. I did it once yesterday, I think, where I just skipped myself. But so that's where you can find me on Twitter. You can find my written work at the League Winners, King Fantasy Sports, DLF, and Player Profiler, as well as my rankings on Fantasy Pros. Catch me on YouTube at youtube.com/FFMadScientist. You can also find me on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. By searching Fantasy Football Mad Scientist. Pretty much type in FF Mad Scientist on any social media or anything like that, and you can find me pretty easily. Yes, so, like I said, thanks for joining me, Jesse. It's good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We will get into it right away. I'll introduce your first guy here. There we go. One sec. We have Oregon State tight end Luke Musgrave checking in at 6'6", 253 with a 4.61 40 time. I had it right there on DLF's rookie Superflex ADP. He currently checks in at 32 overall, so mid to end of the third round. That's pretty solid value. Like I've said with a lot of the tight ends, when we started the pre-draft process, the 1-6 to 112 is where you'd see Moeller go, and then nothing for a while. But since the depth has started to really show, you see Moeller or Kincaid going now more like 206, and then a lot of these guys, the I guess second tier of Washington, Musgrave, Kuntz, Laporta, they're all slipping easily into the third round. So at 32, if Musgrave's your guy, he's pretty good value. What do you think about him?
Yeah, with tight ends, I chase the big athletic freak shows. Like that's the simple fact, right? Like I know he's not
RAS score, simple, most important thing. Size and RAS score right there.
Guys that can play inline and outside. So he's shown the ability to play both. He has a really good 10 split, and that's his burst. And you see the RAS score. His speed score is off the charts as well. So you put that all together, and you got an athletic freak show. I think Lance Zierlein comped him to Dallas Goedert. And it makes sense with how you could actually see him being used in the NFL. So I know the knock on him has been injuries his whole career. He only played a handful of games his last year before he came out. So his yards per route run stuff's off the charts, but it's like a minimal amount of games. So that's the issue with him. He's never been fully healthy, but he has the multi-sport background, and you see kind of his skiing where he did a lot of slalom in high school, and you see that translate with his hips and the way he moves down the field. So realistically, I tight end in this group, there's so many guys that are freak athletes. So it's really just a pick your guy and what you prefer. So Musgrave's the guy, especially like basically the fourth round or late third round. Like I'm all for that guy at that price.
I thought early on, like I have a dynasty team where I have a ton of the first round picks and I needed a tight end. And all along I was just assuming I was going to take Moeller. And then I was assuming, as we progress that I was going to take Moeller or Kincaid at 206, just one of the two. The further and further we get, the more I think I'm just going to wait for Musgrave, Washington, Kuntz in the third or fourth round and just say, screw it and take the running back, wide receiver, quarterback early. He just, the second tier of tight ends is so deep this year. Do you think, what do you think he goes in the draft? Do you think he makes day 2 somewhere?
Yeah, like there's been talkings of him possibly going in round 1. I don't know if that's going to happen, but he's been kind of all over the board depending on who you follow. But realistically, like I'd say round 2. Like he's been knocked enough in the mocks where somebody's going to take a chance on him. And if you get that, and like you were saying, if you're drafting, like why spend up for Musgrave? Or sorry, not Musgrave. But Kincaid or Moeller, yeah. Why spend up for those guys when you can get like somebody a couple rounds later who ideally like it's just the upside shot? Because
the funny part is the Kincaid seems to be the most, I don't know, maybe talented of the bunch. Mayer
Mhm.
seems to be the most well-rounded. But as far as size and RAS score, like athleticism, the second round, Kuntz, Washington, and Musgrave seem to be more athletic. And,
Mhm.
that's what I chase in tight ends. So why not save that first or mid-second round pick and just chase the high, they're tight ends. It's all kind of a crapshoot. You don't know. You look at Kyle Pitts. We don't know what the hell's going on with him. So yeah, I think
Right.
I'd rather just wait and take one of these three.
Yeah, because like even Kincaid, he's a little bit smaller, so that's going to kind of
That's what I
limit how
mean.
he's.
He's
Yeah, he's going to
6'2"
be.
or 6'3", right?
Yeah, so he's very much going to fall into that Evan Ingram type of player, where you specifically have to use him in that scheme. You can't like really
Yeah.
line him in line, and he can't block.
No,
And
not at all.
Musgrave isn't the best blocker, but he has the traits and the ability to, if someone will actually sit down with him and work at it, like you can see him being a better blocker, and where he's on the field, he's playing all the snaps and running all the routes, and that's really what you want from a tight end.
Got a particular team you'd like to see him go to?
I
I mean, Green
honestly,
Bay at 15, but I don't think he goes anywhere.
yeah, I
near
don't
that.
think he's gonna go that early. But realistically, I just want him with a good quarterback. Like that's when you go down and look at fantasy tight ends, it's basically all good quarterbacks across the board. So a team that needs a tight end and like that has a good quarterback, I would not be particular about that. Like if he goes to the Cowboys, like I'd be super thrilled with that.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
But
I
like
would,
where you can,
if he managed, like I assume he's probably going to go day 2.
Mhm.
So second round might be a little high, but even second round, if he slipped to the third round, I'd love to see the Lions use a third rounder on him.
that would be great.
Goff, especially assuming you think maybe they get a quarterback, to sit for a year. Maybe they get Hooker in the first round, then double back for a defender with the second pick and a second rounder and go Musgrave in the third. It seems like a good situation after Hawkinson's gone.
Like if you get him with one of those good rookie quarterbacks, like if you build those two together where they can form that bond and build together, like I would be all for that as well too.
Very
so
true.
I'm pretty open to where he goes.
I went to load up your next player and had a temporary stroke there and forgot how to use my keyboard. Give me 1 second.
No
We're gonna skip to your receiver now because I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to do your running back just yet. I get a little excited about him, so we'll transition to Jesse's second, my guy. That is BC wide receiver Zay Flowers. He's been a popular one. 5'9", 182. The typical knock has been that he's a oversized slot receiver, but he checks in at a 4.42 40 time. He has moved up significantly.
Yeah.
DLF Superflex ADP over the last few weeks. He was going at the back end, middle to back end of the second round. He currently sits at the 110 right now. So he's getting in there. And I was saying he seems to be the bridge there after the 110 cliff hits. He seems to be the bridge guy to get to that, second round of dart, not dart throws, but there's a whole bunch of running backs and wide receivers where they're all kind of valued similarly and nobody really knows what the hell's going on. So what are your thoughts on Zay? Actually, sorry, one last thing I was about to mention. Going back to Musgrave, where do you have him ranked in your tight ends? I forgot to ask.
So I'm fighting the urge to put him at tight end 2. He's at tight end 3. He is
Mayer and Kincaid.
Yeah, those two. Like it's just Mayer's so safe. It's hard to really knock him.
He's well-rounded.
Yeah, he's gonna he's gonna get in. He's gonna start. He's gonna play and he's gonna be productive. It's just more the upside case with him that worries me. But and Kincaid is like a really good wide receiver, that plays tight end. So it's those two have those traits, and you're just hoping Musgrave turns it into that.
All righty. Same question, Zay Flowers. Where do you have him? I think I currently have him. I think he's my wide receiver 3-4. He keeps flip-flopping back and forth. I always have JSN first. Then despite my stupidity, I'm a big size guy, so I have Quentin Johnston. And then him and Addison are flip-flopping back and forth.
Yeah. So Flowers is my wide receiver 3. I have QJ at wide receiver 2. JSN at wide receiver 1. I'm not as high as everyone is on JSN, where they think he's this generational prospect. I think he's very good, but
I'm not as high on any of these receivers.
Yeah, Zay is really the last guy I'm super confident in as far as for fantasy because he could play inside and out and he does everything. And we'll get into kind of like him being a yak god and like how that translates to him. But once you get past to him, it's like I like Addison, but I have a little bit more concerns with him. And then Downs is just a slot guy, so like. He's a small slot guy, so that he can't really go outside. So that kind of limits him. So once we get past Zay, I'm really just pounding the table for running backs up to that point for a while.
I'm interested to see where he goes in the draft. It's sounding very likely that he could end up being a first round pick after all is
Mm-hmm.
said and done, and I would think that would move him into pretty much everyone's consensus top 3 for
Yep.
receivers.
Yeah,
You got a
like
spot you'd like to see him?
honestly, like he's like you see it on Twitter all the time. People are saying he's going to be the first wide receiver off the board. So that's pushing him up into
That's a lot.
That's a really high spot where he could be top 15. And I'm like I don't know, is he worth the top 15 pick? I don't know. But we saw Harmon was talking about him where he's like the one guy he could see profiling into a wide receiver 1 for a team besides JSN, where he has the traits where you can line him up inside and out. I know he's 5'9", but he can play outside as well as inside. And his yak ability along with his route running, like you watch the tape and you see him just cut on a dime and he loses a defender. Like the defender just caught grasping for air. So you see that ability where his yak ability just like blows everyone out of the water besides Quentin Johnston. So it's like those two have those special traits where I want guys that are difference makers and have those traits. And I see that on tape from Flowers. And you watch, he had the highest single season dominator and he has the highest career dominator from any wide receiver in this class. And part of that is playing at BC, but you can't knock a guy for being good, right?
No.
So he fully took advantage of the situation, and he was playing with some horrendous quarterback play. Like I think it was, I can't remember the quarterback. It is like Zurovich or whatever his name is. He's just dog water. He's dog water. But it's, you see it, and you're just, I'm thrilled to watching Zay. So I love his tape and like the stats he put on forward. Like I'm all in on Zay Flowers. Like I took in a mock at 108, and I'd be fine drafting him there in rookie drafts.
I do think he sneaks into the first round of NFL drafts, but I would be shocked if anyone besides JSN or Quentin Johnston goes as the first wide receiver. I think Addison might go before him in the NFL draft. I don't necessarily like him more. I just, from everything I've heard, it's one of those three as the first one, going somewhere around 11 to Tennessee, being the first one off the board, I think. Because there's not that many in the top 10 that really, what it was. When's it start for a receiver? 11 for Tennessee, 12 for Houston, is it?
That seems like the first spot, unless someone's gonna reach earlier than that, because you don't have the quote unquote like Jamar Chase in the class or anything like that, right? Sure. So it starts really about pick 10. That's where you're going to see a wide receiver go. And then just depending how far it goes out, the Patriots will probably take one because they have literally nothing for wide receivers. Like they have Juju, but outside of that, it's just guys that nobody cares about. So you'll probably see the Patriots take one at 15, and then it's going to trickle down. So how many wide receivers do you think go in the first round? Like maybe 3 or 4?
JSN, Quentin Johnston, Addison. I've heard as many as 5 because I've heard Zay Flowers and Josh Downs could both go in the first.
You heard Downs going in round 1? I haven't heard that at all.
I've heard Downs late in the first, but I don't know. I'm going to say 4 in some combination with QJ and JSN being the 2. I think go for sure.
Right, and someone could take a flyer on Hyatt's speed just if they need like someone to stretch the field late in round 1. Like we heard that earlier, and I could see that where they're like, we need someone who just can blow the top off of defense. Like I know he's limited and has issues, but like the speed is legit.
Are there any 35-year-old wide receivers in case the Bears need to draft someone?
Right. I'm curious to see who they're going to take there because they got to take a wide receiver.
Who's the oldest wide receiver in the draft? That's what they'll take. And then the Patriots will take whoever the fastest is who has no talent whatsoever. Right. Having said that, I own both of them on the same dynasty squad. So
it'll be perfect, right? It's like, let's just get an old fast guy. Yeah, exactly.
Transitioning to much happier topics is my guy. I was thinking about that today. I was thinking, shit, I guess at some point I have to do my own my guys list. And when I do, it will be headlined right here by Texas running back Roschon Johnson, checking in at 6 feet, even 219 and a 4.59 40 time. So not the greatest 40 time, but he appears to be one of the few who could be a legit 3-down size speed back. This is one where I think I mentioned this to someone else the other day. After a year with Roschon, I get he's Bijan. I get he's loyal. Why the hell not transfer out of Texas? I think if he transfers, he might be above Gibbs in this class. Like he wasn't. People say I get he was Bijan's backup. That is true. but he was eating legit work out of his
Mhm.
workload there. Like this wasn't just, hey, Bijan's tired or we're up 40. Let's give Roshan a couple carries. He was putting up serious, like solid numbers. And I wonder if he goes to a spot where he can be a 3-down, workhorse. I just wonder what the sky, I don't think he's obviously not Bijan, but
No.
I compared him to the other day to a more talented Josh Jacobs, and people thought I was batshit crazy. But I guess I'm lower on Josh Jacobs and higher on Johnson than most people. But
No, that's a fair
don't
comp
get high
because
on Johnson, I guess, is the moral of the story.
right, they both have those similar skill sets where they're tackle breaking machines, and you see
Yeah.
this with both of them. Right, they're not the best athlete in the world. Like that's not what we're
No.
trying to say, but they get into the open field and they punish defenders. And you see like the highlights with Jacobs where he stiff armed the Falcons defender into another universe where he just went flying. Like you see this from Roshan. He leads the class in like missed tackles forced per attempt. Like he's really good, and he doesn't have that elusiveness like a Tajay Spears, where he's just like a jitterbug.
Well,
but like
look at the size difference.
right, exactly.
You have to be elusive that big.
But he breaks tackles and he's still learning the position. The dude was a quarterback coming into Texas. Like I don't think people realize that. Where like he was a quarterback, transitioned to a running back, and he dominated in year one before the second coming showed up in Bijan. So
it's Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill, isn't it? Oh right. Shit! Here we go.
Oh yeah, he'd be so frustrating for people.
Is he going to be on Yahoo as a tight end? Is what I want to know.
Yeah, we could actually get some fancy points for the position. I would love that. That would be great.
Yeah, he is by far my guy in the group. Like I said earlier, I think I have him. He's alternating back and forth. He's for the most part my RB3. I've also got Tajay. I always call him Tajay Sharp. Mm-hmm. After the old receiver, it's Tajay Spears and Kendre Miller I have up there. I've also got Tucker and Bigsby a bit. I'm lower on Charbonnet, but he's one where, like I said, there's the top two running backs. They seem to be in their own tier. Well, Bijan in his own tier, Gibbs in his own tier. And then tier 3 seems to be a group of, depending on your preference, 4 to 6 running backs. And I think draft capital and landing spot is really going to start to separate these guys. Because right now, I could have Roshan as RB3. I could have Roshan as RB8. Same with Charbonnet and the other ones I named. So he's kind of landing spot. I think he's going to, because of his size and speed combo and his potential 3-down workload, I think he's going to go higher in the NFL draft than you people will think. I think he might go day 2 or round 2 at some point, at very least round 3. But having said that, if I'm wrong and he slips to day 3, I'm going to be lowering him in my rankings and accepting that maybe I was wrong. But
yeah. So you were talking about guys that are loyal. Like it's funny. Like I like this aspect of him because he stayed in Texas too, and it might not have been the best situation, but this applies to Zay Flowers because he stayed and went to the Shrine Bowl, even though he got an invite to
I remember
the Senior Bowl.
Seeing that.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I'm a sucker for guys that are loyal. That's just something.
I guess it said something about their character, but
yeah. But
it wasn't just him. I said the same thing though with Tucker and Bigsby. Both of them could have probably been higher up in the running back rankings if they got away from terrible offenses. I mean, they didn't have Bijan in front of them, but
right. Still. And like with Spears, you have a guy that I saw David Willisley was talking about. He might be the guy that gets dinged because of the injury concerns, like with his knees and issues that he showed up. And also I saw the only running back who's gone in the top 2 rounds out of the Power 5 conferences is the guy from Seattle. What the heck's his name? Rashad Penny, that went round 1, like since 2015. He's the only running back outside of the Power 5.
Where did he go to college? I forget. It seems like
San Diego State, I think it was San Diego State. Oh. But yeah, like there's literally, you think one guy would do that, but there's been no one. So Roshan's size, his skill set, like it translates, and he was earning.
I got weird beeping noises in my back.
I think that was my insulin pump.
Oh, it was you. I'm like, what the hell was that?
That was my insulin pump. Sorry.
Okay. I got you. Shit happens. I understand.
Yeah, right.
No, it just tripped me out because it sounded like it came from behind me, and I'm like, what the fuck was that?
You're like, wait a second.
No, I thought my kid left a toy or something in here. So continue.
No, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, but like with Roshan, he had the highest elusive rating from PFF, which like you would not, those two don't add up in your head. You're like, you're thinking elusive and you look at Roshan and you're like, what the heck? But you watch him play and you see how it makes sense. Cause the guy's just, PFF loves guys who break tackles. And like, that is him. He's like Javonte in that form. Like he will earn extra yard for you. He'll fall forward. He's able to catch passes. Like you're saying, he's not going to run the wheel routes and
Yeah,
like go down the
he doesn't
seam.
have breakaway speed either.
No, he doesn't. But he's still learning the position, so he's only going to get better at running back. He's not a finished product.
I also thought, I mean, I know I comped him to more talented Josh Jacobs. I also thought he looked a lot like ran like Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah, like that's high praise. Like Marshawn Lynch is one of my
not for me.
players.
I'm a Saints fan. I hate Marshawn.
Oh God,
that's not high praise to me.
You would have hated my post where I shared his like he was talking about the little baby stiff arm he gave to Jabari, and I was just like,
oh yeah, we can't be friends anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's so no what is it? Beast mode, Quake, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, it's so good.
I've gone through that and the Minneapolis Miracle. Nope, I've selectively blocked those out. They never happened.
Yeah, you must hate some Stephon Diggs then. But
yeah, I've never owned it. I've never had him on any team, Stephon Diggs. And I always thought to myself, I was like, he's a good receiver. Why do I never own him? Oh, Minnesota Vikings, I hate him. That's why.
Like it clicks. Totally
but I learned that a few, maybe 6, because I started fantasy hockey. That's where I started.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that a while back. I'm a diehard Red Wings fan. And I learned the 1 year, all the best values were on Boston Bruins players. So I drafted them all. And I spent the whole season with like 5 players, Bruins on my team, and I hated it. I ended up winning the league, but I've never hated it more because I had to cheer for players I fucking hated. Yeah, so I'm like, nope, never again. Like, trying to think who it is in the NFL that I just hated. I think he retired, but it's like, no, I don't care. I don't care how far he falls. I'm never drafting him. I just don't care.
Yeah, there's like I'm in some of my home leagues, and we're Seahawks fans. So one of my buddies would strictly take Seahawks players, and I'd be like, "You're such an idiot. What are you doing?" He's like, "I don't care. I just like to root for the players." And he's taking like backup wide receivers and trying to play those guys. I was like, "Dude, this is a bridge too far, my friends. You're not gonna win." And you get last place, but he enjoyed it, so I was like, "Hey, your prerogative. Good, do you, boo boo."
I got a work league with $100 buy-in where the guys are like that. We're almost in Detroit, like we're Windsor, Ontario. Mm-hmm. They all buy Detroit Lions players.
Yep.
I got before. So we're 23. Before last season, I got a 2 firsts and a second for a receiver. Would you care to guess which receiver I got 2 firsts and a second for?
Don't tell me it was DJ Chark.
No, Kenny Golladay.
Oh, even better. Oh, Mr. Dust
even
himself.
Better. Oh, no, it gets better. So it gets better. So the 1 first last year turned into Kenneth Walker. The second is going to be the 201 this year, and the first rounder is about to turn into Bijan Robinson.
My goodness.
So essentially, I traded Golladay for Walker, Bijan, and whoever I take at the 201. I love homers. It's awesome.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like we in our first year in our home dynasty league, my buddy traded for MVS. He traded 2 firsts. Like he's like, "Oh yeah, well, I don't care about first round picks." And they turned into freaking like Jalen Waddle, and I can't remember that it's like Patrick Mahomes or something ridiculous. You're just like, dude, what the heck are you doing? It's like, oh my gosh.
Wow, this was a My Guys episode like 5 minutes ago. I don't know where it went sideways, but anyway, so that concludes your 3 My Guys. Thanks for joining me. You want to take one last chance here to tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me. I'm majority of the time on Twitter, so go find me at JMoeller5 on Twitter. Find my written work, League Winners, PGW Fantasy, the podcast I do, any podcast streaming platform, you'll find them there. And yeah, that's where you can find the majority of my work.
You can find my work at the League Winners, King Fantasy Sports, DLF, Player Profiler, and my rankings at Fantasy Pros. You can catch me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much any social media just by looking up FF Mad Scientist. This has been My Guys with Jesse Moeller. Thank you for joining us in the Mad Science Lab. Again, I'm Aaron St. Dennis at FF Mad Scientist. Thanks for watching. Have a good night, everyone.